You are listening to the Central Indiana Sports Report, episode number 232.3, the Combat Sports Report with Hanson Crafton. On this week's edition of the Combat Sports Report, Hanson previews UFC 314 in Miami and a boxing card in Atlantic City.
You're listening to the Central Indiana Sports Report with your host, Greg Mengelt.
Hanson, it's been a couple of weeks. Hasn't really been much to talk about in the fighting world, but the fighting season is upon us, and it starts this weekend, right?
Yes, things are finally picking up. Got a couple of good events this weekend. We got a good UFC card. And we also got a boxing match that's got two interesting fights on that as well.
Tell me about the UFC fights in Miami, Hanson.
All right, so this weekend in Miami we have the UFC 314. It is, in my opinion, it's a sneaky, really good card. It's got a lot of names on it, a lot of interesting fights. So I think it could end up being a really good card. It's headlined by the former featherweight champion, Alexander Volkanovski. So he is going to be fighting Diego Lopes, and this fight is going to be for the Featherweight Championship. That is 145 pounds. The ex-champion, I guess to say now, Ilia Topuria is going up to 155 pounds. He's going to try to go for the belt at 155 pounds. He said the weight cuts to 145 are getting to him. So he's moved up. He vacated the belt. So now the former champ who lost to Topuria, Volkanovski, will now fight Diego Lopes. Volkanovski is coming off two losses, both of them by KO. He took on the 55 champion Islam on short notice, got knocked out in that fight, and then came back 5 months later, fought Topuria, and did get knocked out in that fight to lose his 145-pound championship. But he has taken a lot of time off. I know a lot of guys after a couple of knockouts do like to sit for a while. He's set since February of 2024. So he's going on, a year and 2 months. So he should be, he should have his chin well rested. His body's had time to get healed up and stuff. So we'll see what kind of Volkanovski comes out. Now, he is 36, so, age does come into it there. So we'll see. We'll see what kind of
he is the favorite in this one, right?
Right. We'll see what kind of Volkanovski shows up. I mean, if he's the champ before, he should be fine. But, you never know, and that's what makes it interesting about fights. He's fighting the kid Lopes. This is a younger Brazilian kid. He is a finisher. He has 26 wins, 10 are by knockout, 12 are by submission, and he's got 15 finishes in the first round. He is explosive early. Now, he does tend to fade late. He has shown his last two fights. He has got tired at the end. He's been very explosive in the first couple rounds, and then he tends to fade and doesn't really perform well at the end of the fight. So that will be another thing to keep an eye on, because Volkanovski is in great shape, and he's able to keep the same pace throughout the fight and pretty much be the same fighter throughout the fight, even in a 5-round championship fight.
Before we go on, Hanson, we should tell everybody that this is 10 o'clock on Saturday night from Miami.
Yes. Like I said, it's interesting with Lopes. Like I said, he's a big finisher. He's finished so he's been in the UFC for 6 fights. He's 5-1 in the UFC. He lost his first fight in the UFC. It was a very close fight, and he took it on 24 hours notice. A guy was fighting. He had a teammate or two, I think, on the card. Somebody got injured, fell out. He said he would fight, so he stepped in on short notice. He ended up losing that fight, very close fight. He had his opponent in danger a couple times. One time he was saved by the bell. So he was pretty impressive in that loss. He went on to finish his next 3 opponents, 2 in the first round. And then his last 2 fights, he fought Dan Ige on short notice. His opponent got sick the day of the fight. It was in Vegas. Dan Ige is a guy who trains in Vegas, so he was able to step in and fight him. He did tire out in that fight. He did get the win. He tired out in that fight. And then in his last fight, he fought a former title challenger, Brian Ortega. He did hurt Brian Ortega in the first round, but he also faded late in that fight as well. So that's going to be something to keep an eye on that fight. I tend to lean towards Volkanovski just because, before his last 2 fights get knocked out, I mean, he looked like a really good champion. He's a really good fighter. Probably decision. I think Volkanovski wins by decision.
All right. The prelims begin at 6 o'clock, and those are on ESPN Plus. The main card is on ESPN Plus pay-per-view, so if you're interested, check that out. What else is interesting on the card, Hanson?
So there's a few interesting fights on here. I'm just going to go down the card. So in your co-main event, you've got Michael Chandler, and he's taking on Paddy Pimblett. This is a fight at 155 pounds. That is the lightweight division. This is an interesting fight, kind of like a Paxton on the guard, maybe. Michael Chandler has been around for a little bit. He's a little up in age. He is 23-9. He has had, he's fought the best of the best. He's came from Bellator. He was a champion in Bellator. So he's fought the best they've had to offer. He's been in UFC. He's fought the best the UFC has to offer. Hasn't really had much luck in the UFC. He's 2-4. But like I said, he's fought nothing but guys who's either held a belt or fought for a belt. Paddy Pimblett is coming up. He's a young guy from UK. A lot of fans behind him. The kid's got a lot of hype. He's 6-0 in the UFC. He's got 4 finishes. He's a really good jiu-jitsu guy. Not really great wrestler, but he is good on the ground with his jiu-jitsu. He's aggressive. He goes for submissions. So he is a threat on the ground.
You really only need to be good at one or the other. Being good at both is just a luxury, right?
It is. I would prefer to be, if I had to pick one to be better at, I would like to be better at wrestling. I think wrestlers kind of can dictate things a little bit better because of their skill set. But yes, both of them, if you have one trait, you are okay on the ground. In any fight, you always have a chance. And that's what makes this interesting, because Chandler is a wrestler, but Chandler's a guy who really doesn't use his wrestling. So we don't see it much. He likes to stand and bang. He likes to have exciting fights. He's kind of explosive on the feet. So he doesn't really use his wrestling, go to it often. So it'll be interesting to see if he does against a guy like Paddy. Paddy is going to have size on him, but Paddy isn't the best on his feet. Kind of average. Does kind of leave his chin in the air when he strikes, so it will be interesting to see if maybe Chandler can catch him. Chandler does have a lot of power. That is an interesting fight, and kind of see where Paddy is. Is he just a hype job, or is he a guy who could contend for a belt? This is one of those fights, they say if you want to fight for a title, you got to win this fight. Well, this is one of those fights for Paddy Pimblett. If he dreams of fighting for a title, this is the fight he's going to need to win. So this one's a real interesting fight. I don't really know how it goes, honestly. I was honestly surprised when I saw that Chandler was the underdog. I would have thought Chandler would have been a slight favorite in this fight. I tend to lean towards Chandler a little bit, but I'm just not as big into Paddy as others may be. So who knows? But I think Chandler probably wins, but I could see it going to Paddy. Probably be a decision unless Chandler can catch Paddy early. I think Chandler he's the one of the two that have the ability to knock the other one out. So I think if it goes that way, Chandler probably catches him early. If not, I think this one probably will go to the judges.
Yeah, the money line on these two is fairly even. I mean, I would say Pimblett is a significant favorite, but not a big favorite,
Right.
The big favorite is that this goes the distance. That's what the odds say.
Yeah, I think it is a fight that will go the distance.
And then we have Patricio Freire and Yair Rodriguez.
Yes. And that's another, just an interesting fight. Yair is a guy who's been in the UFC for a while. he is coming off 2 losses, but he's a former interim champion. He's only fought the top of the division. His last few fights, he's fought Volkanovski, he's fought Max Holloway. He's fought everybody. He's fought the Korean Zombie in a fight that was, I think it won Fight of the Year, the year they fought. So he's an exciting guy. He loves to kind of bang a little bit. He's a guy who's good at both. He's got good striking, and he's got jiu-jitsu. Not much wrestling. He has had trouble with wrestlers in the past. I know Frank Yeager was able to dominate him when they fought, but he is good on the ground with jiu-jitsu. Patricio Pitbull, he's a guy coming over from Bellator. He was a two-weight champion over there. He has a win over Michael Chandler. He actually knocked him out when they fought for Bellator's lightweight title.
Whoa.
He was a very good fighter. The issue with Patricio, he's 37. He is coming off 2 losses of his last 3 fights. He's been knocked out 2 of his last 3 fights. Maybe it might be a little too late to come over to the UFC. UFC, it does have a little bit better competition than what he saw in Bellator. So it is going to be a tough fight anyways. So we'll see. It'd be interesting to see how this one goes. Patricio is a finisher. He's a guy who's got 36 wins. He does have 12 knockouts and 12 submissions. So he is aggressive. He does have skills. It's just going to be interesting to see where he is at his career. Did he get over to the UFC too late, or is he over at the right time? Maybe he needed to be rejuvenated. This move could excite him a little bit. So we'll see. That's going to be in the featherweight division, which is 145 pounds. And I think that's pretty showcased on this card. I know there's like 2 or 3 featherweight title fights or featherweight fights on the card. And then I think there's a couple on the prelims too. So 145 is a division that's going to be highlighted on this card. So there's going to be some exciting fights.
The odds say that Rodriguez wins in under 2.5 rounds. What do you think about that?
I agree with that. I think his kickboxing will be what gets him the victory.
And there's another featherweight fight.
Yes, there is Bryce Mitchell is going to be taking on Gene Silva. This is a bad blood fight, so those are always interesting.
Yes.
The bad blood fights, they either go one or 2 ways. It's either going to be a really good fight or it's going to be a really bad fight. I don't know what it is, but anytime they've had guys in there that's had bad blood that don't like each other, sometimes they get in there and they get a little timid. It's like neither one of them wants to make the mistake that opens up the other one that could lead to a counter or something. But it happens. There's been a few times in the UFC where you've had some really bad blood. They get in there and the fight's kind of a stinker. So this one could do that. I don't think so because of the styles. This is your old school grappler versus striker matchup. Bryce Mitchell's a very good wrestler. So that will be his advantage. He's going to have the wrestling advantage. Now, Silva is a good jiu-jitsu guy. I don't know who would have the best jiu-jitsu of the two. Mitchell has good jiu-jitsu as well. He's like one of, I think, 3 people in the UFC that's hit somebody with a twister submission before. So he's really good on the ground. He's got really good jiu-jitsu. Be interesting to see where that fight goes. On the feet, Silva will have a big advantage. I'd say his striking is probably the biggest advantage anybody has in the fight. Mitchell's not very good on his feet. Sometimes he reaches with his punches, kind of lunges a little bit, gets a little bit out of his wrestling range as well, trying to strike. He's been knocked out a couple of times, so his chin's not really great, not really good at taking punches. So he doesn't need to be on the feet at all. If it stays on the feet, I can see Silva ending it by knockout. I think he's a big favorite in this fight, but it's one of those where, like I said, Mitchell is a good wrestler, and I always tend to kind of lean towards wrestlers when I see an advantage. I just think that their skill set can dictate where fights go. If they're good wrestlers, if he's in a good field and he's able to get his shots off from good distance and be able to get some good takedowns and to keep them down, I could see Mitchell still in the fight, honestly, even if with him being a big underdog. I could see him still in the fight with his wrestling.
Silva is just over a 2-1 favorite, and you agree with that?
Yeah, he's he's been really impressive since coming to UFC. He's on a 10-fight win streak in his overall career. He's 4-0 in the UFC. He's got 4 KOs, 2 in the first round. He's a guy with big power, good speed, good counter puncher. That's what I'm saying. On the feet, that's the biggest advantage somebody has is his stand up versus Mitchell's. So I don't think Mitchell's going to want to be on the feet at all. It starts on the feet. He's going to try to get it to the ground as quick as possible. At least that's what I would expect him to do. I don't think he's going to want to stand with Silva at all. Silva's a guy who only needs one shot. So that's going to be the interesting part to see. Does Mitchell try to stand with him at all? Or is he going to blitz him and just try to get this thing to the ground as quick as possible? And then we'll see how Silva fares on the ground. I know he's had one UFC fight where he was taken down a couple of times. He was able to get back up, but he has shown that he can be taken down. So that'll be Mitchell's opportunity. Like I said, try to steal this fight is he's got to use his wrestling. He's got to be on top of his game with his wrestling as well.
All right, Hanson, it's the odds are even for over 2.5 rounds and under 2.5 rounds. What you got?
Under. I think Silva gets it done. But like I said, don't be surprised if Bryce Mitchell gets the steal with the wrestling. But I think Silva knocks him out.
Circling back to the main event, Volkanovski, 7th title fight in the featherweight division. He's 6-1, so this guy is a featherweight legend, but maybe toward the tail end. Last thoughts on the main event?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, Volkanovski's a very good fighter. You know, before he had those losses, speaking of him defending the belt 5 times, he had won all 11 fights he's had in the UFC. He's got a lot of good wins in his career. He's a respectable champion as well. So it's maybe it's just father time. You know, Lopes is a good opponent though. Like I said, he's very explosive. He'll be super dangerous for the first couple rounds. So Volkanovski will have to be aware of that. You know, he is coming off 2 knockout losses, but it's a super interesting fight. I've watched every one of Lopez's fights. I was a guy who was very impressed with him in his first fight, even when he lost. So I've kind of leaned on him since then. I kind of felt like he was a surprise kid. I've actually bet on him a couple times as an underdog, and I've won some bets with him. So he's the guy that I've watched from every one of his fights from the UFC. Like I said, I think Volkanovski, the fighter, if he's still like he was, I think he gets it done. But if he's slowed down any and he can't take the punches he used to be able to take, I could see him get knocked out within the first couple rounds of this fight.
Let's move to boxing, where there's also a pretty decent card in Atlantic City and an IBF welterweight title on the line. Tell me about that one, Hanson.
Yes, we got one of my favorites, Jaron Ennis, and he is taking on Eimantas Stanionis. Boots is 33-0, 29 KOs. I grew up a huge Roy Jones Jr. fan, and Boots is very close to Roy Jones Jr. inside the ring. He likes to showboat a little bit. He's very entertaining with the way he fights, and he's very explosive. You know, that's how Roy Jones was. Roy Jones could entertain you and lull you to sleep a little bit, but then he would knock you out with his power and his sharp on his punches. Boots is the same. I'm a big fan of the way Boots fights. I enjoy watching him fight. Stanionis is tough too, though. He's 15-0, 9 KOs, so you got 2 undefeated guys in here. The last fight Stanionis had was in May of 24. So and before that, he was on a 2-year layoff. I think that could probably be an issue here, honestly, and I think this is kind of a warm-up match for Boots. I think Boots is going to go off with Turkey, and he's got a couple big fights planned for him. So I expect Boots to get this done. I expect a knockout. I think his counter punching is going to be the difference here. I watched Stanionis' last fight. He gets a little sloppy in the clinch range. He likes to lean on his uppercut, so he likes to try to get close. But he gets a little sloppy. If you get a little space in him, he does reach a little bit. And I think that'll be his downfall. I think if you reach against Boots, he's going to hit you with something sharp. something clean and something that's probably going to put you on your butt. And I just think this one it's probably over before 7 rounds.
The start time for the card is 8 o'clock on the DAZN app. Great app if you like fighting. Definitely worth the cost of admission.
Yes, it is.
And 11 o'clock is the estimated time of the title fight. What's interesting on the card, Hanson?
The second fight I'm looking at, another good one for me, is the Raymond Ford versus Thomas Mattis. Raymond Ford is 16-1 with 8 KOs. What's interesting about him is he was a very talented prospect. He looked very good. He ran into Nick Ball in his last fight. Nick Ball's a world champion, 126, I think. What's that? Super lightweight, super flyweight. But Nick Ball's a champion. He's very good. He's ranked 7th in the world. But Raymond Ford did lose to him. That is his one loss. But he is coming after the loss to Ball. He did fight Orlando Gonzalez. Looked pretty good in that fight. Good bounce back. He did have the loss to Nick Ball was a split decision, so it really wasn't like he got beat bad in it. So I think he's still on the track he was on. This will be kind of a fight for him to continue to stay on that track. Matisse is a decent fighter. He's 22-4. He's coming off of a loss in his last fight to Eduardo Hernandez. Before that, he did have 5 straight wins, and then he had another loss. But 4 of his 5 wins are by KO, so he's kind of a big puncher. So Ford will have to watch out for that. But I don't think he's going to give Ford any trouble. I think Ford is able to move around, avoid pretty much all the dangerous punches from Matisse, and I think Ford gets the job done and then moves on to maybe rematch Ball or maybe waits on Inoue. Who knows? That's one of the weight classes that's getting interesting because I think you're getting with the way that the turkeys throwing the money around, you're starting to see these weight classes that are coasters kind of just joining together.
Sure looks that way.
I know Inoue from 120 all the way up to 126. He's pretty much down to fight whoever, and that's kind of this range that Nick Ball and Raymond Ford are in, that 120 to 126 range. A lot of good, interesting fights coming up there. There's just a lot of good, interesting fights coming up everywhere, it seems like. It seems like every time I look at the rankings in weight classes, I'm seeing a name that I've heard a lot about shooting up. And next thing I know, I'm seeing them in a big fight and they're winning. The 35 class, that's one that's just exploded with a bunch of young guys too. Mm-hmm. So there's just a lot of good fights coming up, especially with the way the Turkish came in. He's kind of getting rid of the promoters being a little stingy, and we're getting good fights that we used to not get. So it's an interesting time, good time. A lot of good fights coming up. But, yeah, this weekend you got 2 really good boxing fights, and then we're just getting closer to the Cinco de Mayo weekend.
Anything good in the heavyweight division coming up?
Not until we get to the Canelo fight. I think Martin Bakole is coming back on that card.
That's right, on May 3rd in Saudi Arabia.
There was a rumble today, though, that they're hearing Tyson Fury and Joshua may finally fight.
Are either one of those guys a threat anymore?
I don't think so, but I think it's still a fight that people would want to see.
Joshua seems done to me.
He is. He's not going to beat anybody significant, but he's still got a couple fights in him. Wilder's the guy I think that needs to kind of hang it up. I don't think he has any fight left in him. Fury, I'd have to see it. I don't really know if he's got any fight left in him. Joshua,
at least Wilder prepares hard for fights and he's got heart. I'm not sure Joshua has either one of those things.
Joshua is more. I think he's more concerned in how he looks.
Yeah.
And his chin his chin's just deserted him. And that can't happen in the heavyweight division. You have to be able to take punch. Like he can't, the last fight with Du Bois showed that he can't get in any dangerous exchanges because he can't handle what's coming back. He hit Du Bois with a really good shot, but then when he went to chase him down, he got caught with the right coming in and it knocked him out. So that's his biggest issue is his chin. He just can't really handle the punching anymore. And the way he fights, he needs to kind of mix it up. So he's going to have to be able to take something, to land something. And he's just at the point where I don't know. Against good heavyweights, he could probably still beat some guys. But if you get him in there against the top good heavyweights, I just don't know if he can handle the punches that are coming from these guys.
In my childhood, all the way up until at least my mid-20s, Hanson, there was never any doubt who the heavyweight champion was. Everybody in the world knew who it was. They were all world famous. When's the last time we had a world famous heavyweight? Is it Evander Holyfield? I mean, it's really been a long time. We really need one.
Yeah.
I
Was
really thought it was
would you say
Joshua.
Lennox? Would
Oh,
you say
Lennox
Lennox was
Lewis. Yes,
famous enough?
of course, Lennox Lewis. My bad. Yes, Lennox Lewis for sure. I really thought Joshua was that guy.
Yeah, he had it until the Ruiz fight. He did. He
Yeah.
was, the Klitschko fight was big for him. He was getting the fan base. He was looking invincible. He had it coming, and then the
But
Ruiz fight happened.
even the Klitschko fight, I thought in him being young and Klitschko being old, he would dominate Klitschko, and he didn't. And from that point, I thought, I'm not sure this guy. I thought he was an Evander Holyfield, Lennox Lewis type fighter through his first 20 fights, and he just turned out not to be.
Yeah, he always had a lot of holes in his game that he never really cleaned up.
You always thought he would.
He,
I know he started late, but
yeah, he fought too tall. One of my favorite Teddy Atlas one time was talking about the way he fights. He said he stands and fights like a skyscraper. He said it's great for your reach and length. He said, but the problem with that is in skyscraper there's a lot of windows you can bust.
yeah, but Lennox Lewis fought the same way, and he had that jab that nobody could beat.
Lennox I thought moved better though. Lennox moved really good for his size.
He
Josh
did,
was
but Josh
stiff.
was a great athlete. He's a really good athlete.
He's a little
Um,
stiff. He's a little bodybuilderish,
yeah,
kind of stiff in there. I think that's his biggest issue with his defense too, is he can't, and his issue with his defense, he always stands, he gets real tall and he tries to just use his hands to block. He just, like kind of just
no,
stiff arms, and then he's always taking punches that way,
no.
and it's just not um, I don't know. Yeah, I'm with you,
J-
Joshua. I thought Joshua was going to be the guy, and he just never was. If he was going to be the greatest, he shouldn't have lost to Usyk, and he lost him twice.
yes,
So it's kind of
yep, and he's much bigger. it's
yeah. I mean that's what's insane. The
And
greatest heavyweight
Usyk
of
is a
his
better
time
fighter.
was
There's no doubt about it. But I thought with Joshua being so big and strong that he would overcome those guys who are just a little like Tyson. Tyson was never a great technical fighter, but his ferocity and his power overcame that a lot of times. I
yeah.
thought that would
Tyson
be
was
Joshua.
yeah. He just didn't live up to, like I was saying with
Yep,
Usyk. It's insane that the best heavyweight of this time is a cruiserweight.
that's right. And now it's time for me to go back and watch some Lennox Lewis because man, was he fun to watch fight.
Yeah,
Oh, just so
Lennox
different than
was good.
everybody else. So he had a lot of that too, where he blocked with his hands, and it cost him a couple of times. Michael Moore comes to mind. That was the big shocker in his career. But after that,
Right.
it was. I think he split with Holyfield, and that was the last one to beat him until Klitschko.
Yeah,
So
Klitschko's kind of what hurt the heavyweight division. He was just
really
so
did.
boring.
So boring.
He was so boring. I know they used to joke and call him Klitschko because he
Yes,
just get
the
so close
worst.
and he would grab.
One of the worst.
Yeah, he.
Oh, the only heavyweight I can think of was worse was Muhammad Ali at the clinching. Muhammad
I,
Ali
I,
used that to his advantage every time, and it's just they just let him get away with it. But whatever, he got away with it.
Klitschko
So
was one of the only heavyweights when he fight I never really cared to watch.
no, sometimes his fights were great. Sometimes they were hug fests.
Yeah, I know when he fought Fury, um, that was the first time he lost. And Fury kind of just stayed away from him. And
Yeah.
it was first time he really just couldn't grab somebody and hold somebody.
Hey, to this day is the Wilder Fury knockdown the craziest you've ever seen a guy get up from a knockdown?
Yeah. From a single knockdown,
Yes.
yeah. When it comes to like just beating, I always think of the Corrales when
Mm,
he kept getting up in that last round. But
yes.
single knockdown, yes, that was. I mean, I thought he was out cold, and
He
then he
looked
just kind
out
of came
cold.
to and stood up.
The referee started to go down like it was over, and it was not. And then he won the fight. And that's what I'm saying. Sometimes heart just is the difference, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that was one of the best trilogies we've had.
Yeah. Fury, I don't like him
Out,
at all, but man, that guy makes entertaining fights.
yeah, outside the second fight, because he kind of just beat Wilder up the second fight, but the first fight and the third fight were real entertaining.
Just so much better fighter than Wilder. Wilder
Yeah,
had that.
Wilder just had that weapon.
He had that weapon. He had that missile. Still does.
Yeah,
If you fight him now, it's still dangerous. I bet.
he just got.
Same with Joshua. They've got so much power. They're still dangerous, but they're just not very good fighters anymore.
Wilder, his last few, he's just been so timid. He's not throwing punches, and he's just.
And that's what made him great.
Yeah, exactly,
He just threw
exactly. He was
bombs. He
just
didn't really know what he was doing. He just threw bombs.
exactly. He was so unorthodox, and
Yeah.
then he was just Thor with that hammer out there. And when he landed it, I mean, it didn't matter who you were, how good you were doing in the fight. You know, both Ortiz fights he was losing, and he just catches him with the right hand, and the fight's over.
Yeah. Yeah. And that happened in his first championship fight. I cannot recall the Canadian boxer's name who he beat, but I tell you, Wilder was fun to watch for a time, though. That's for sure. We were,
He kind of brought it back that time when he was coming. Joshua was
we
there.
were
They
hoping.
made the heavyweights. Yeah, they made the heavyweights interesting again. Then you had
Yeah,
Fury coming back. I mean, there was a time where, but it was pretty much nobody's really taken off since then.
yeah. We
So
were really hoping that that was going to be the new era of heavyweight champion. Of heavyweight fighters with Joseph Parker looked like a guy who was going to be at that level too. Maybe kind of lived up to his. Pretty amazing what they, even though they've come up a little short and they're no longer that good. Pretty amazing stories, especially how late Wilder and Joshua both started their careers.
yeah, yeah, Wilder got into it real late. I think he was a truck driver.
Yeah, he was 20 in his 20s. I believe Joshua was 19 when he started.
Yeah, and that's people don't understand. That's late to get into the fight game.
Yeah, and 3 years later, he's fighting for a heavyweight championship. So that's what we were thinking, the next one, and just never got there. But that's what makes boxing interesting because matchups make fights, and knockouts can really take a lot out of you.
Yeah, they can. They could change a lot of people.
Thank you so much to Hanson for joining the Central Indiana Sports Report once again. One of my favorite guys. If you are interested in the Central Indiana Sports Report continuing to grow and thrive, please consider sharing these segments with your friends and family. We humbly thank you in advance. The Central Indiana Sports Report is a product of ITG Media. And now, Susie.